you know about that, huh? Brute facts. Brute facts. What you know about that? Brute facts. Man, what you know about that? Here's your host with the most, not the boast. Come incorrect to your toast. Hey Eddie, are you ready? Keep that mic steady. It's about to get messy. Eddie, what it do, dog? Brute facts. Brute facts. What you know about that, huh? Brute facts. Brute facts. What you know about that, huh? Brute facts. Brute facts. What you know about that? Brute facts. Man, what you know about that? Here's your host with the most, not the boast. Come incorrect to your toast. Hey Eddie, are you ready? Keep that mic steady. It's about to get messy. Eddie, what it do, dog? Brute facts. Brute facts. What you know about that, huh? Brute facts. Brute facts. What you know about that? Brute facts. What you know about that, huh? Brute facts. Brute facts. What you know about that? Brute facts. Man, what you know about that? Here's your host with the most, not the boast. Come incorrect to your toast. Hey Eddie, are you ready? Keep that mic steady. It's about to get messy. Eddie, what it do, dog? Brute facts. Brute facts. What you know about that, huh? Brute facts. Brute facts. What you know about that?
Welcome to Brute Facts. You caught me opening my beer. It kind of surprised me a little bit. Oh, my camera's messed up. Let me fix my camera. All right. Got a fun one tonight. Nate Dogg, who is a friend from the Atheist Roundtable and TikTok. At least I think we're friends. We'll let him make that decision. It's kind of running late. Didn't have a chance to get everything adjusted. So here we go. We're going to bring Nate on and see if he's ready to clown. What up, Nate?
Hey, what's going on, man?
Man, nothing much. You know, I was going to go without shaving my head, but man, it looks terrible on here. So yeah, I think that's gone. It's, we're not going to do that anymore. So,
yeah, I would recommend cleaning that up.
Yeah, I appreciate it. You know, I was like, I think I'll grow it out a little bit. And then looking at it on here, I'm like, no, I don't think so.
You got enough grow out with the beard, man.
Yeah.
You're compensating enough with the beard.
I hate the bald guy with a beard look. You know, it's so cliche. You know,
Is it though?
well, I don't
Not when you have a beard like that.
Oh, look at you, man! You making me feel good. How about that?
Well, you're the host, man. I gotta warm you up.
Yes, sir. How you doing tonight?
Pretty good, actually.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, sweet. Rock on. This is the part where we talk about the beer of the night. And tonight it is Shock Top, Belgian White, in my frosty mug right here. Mm-hmm. Oh,
Is
look
that
at
one that you put an orange in?
You know, girly men do, but no, I'm just playing. I don't have any orange.
Wow.
Put an orange one.
You know, if you had any followers or listeners that like to do that, you might have just sent them to the next stream there.
You know, I think the Belgian Whites, Shock Top, and what's the other one? The one everybody drinks, Blue Moon. Yeah, those to me are just some of my favorite beer. I don't, you know, it's good balance there. I don't like heavy beers. That's a thing. Is I'm a light kind of guy. You know, I'm
a Stella Artois guy. And then in the summer, the Cidre that they do is real good.
Yeah, I tried this Stella. I thought it was pretty decent, but it was it's a little heavy for me. A little fancy,
a little too fancy.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, we my company is headquartered in the Northeast, and they are some beer drinkers, and we would go to dinners and stuff and go to places, and there's like every other restaurant has beer sampling there, and they're like, oh, this is great, and every one of them just got worse and worse. I was like, yuck. But I'm a bourbon guy, that's why. Yeah. But I can't drink bourbon as much as I would like to because liquor's not good for you.
So it isn't?
Oh no, it is.
I thought it cleaned everything out.
It's hard on the body. It does clean everything out, especially if you drink enough.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. You used to be a Christian, right?
That's correct. I'll start a little softer. I've got 4 children of my own, and my fiance has 1. So we have 5 between the 2 of us. My oldest is 18. My youngest is 11 and her daughter is 8. And so it gets pretty busy from time to time around here. But yeah, I was raised in a Christian home. My mom is a devout Christian woman. My dad, I'm not really sure. Before he passed away, we didn't really have a lot of talks about his beliefs or anything like that. So I couldn't really tell you where he fell on that. I think his mom was Christian, and again, he didn't go to church, and so he would stay home when my mom would take me or my brother or whoever to church. And so I grew up in the church, went through like Sunday school and would do like VBS and all that stuff. Then when I got a little bit older, I would go to some like summer camps every once in a while and be gone for like a week and a half, whatever it would be, then come back, and they would be Christian summer camps, and about half the kids there acted like Christians at the Christian summer camp. But the church that we went to was involved with the camp, and so it was real easy for her to trust me to go there and have people that she knew that were around. Then when I got a little bit older, I got more into like the youth group and not really like evangelizing, but I ended up being a counselor at that camp for a little bit. Met some friends before like the end of high school that I knew for actually a little while after. And then my brother was actually involved with like a missionary company, and they would go on like summer trips with evangelism in there, also with some like teaching and kind of trying to groom to be either preachers or
Right.
whatever the case is. And we actually went to some pretty fancy places, and that's why I was okay with going there, because I went to one trip. I went to Paris and London. There was a trip that I went to Hawaii to do some stuff out there. We would go to Mexico, and there was a hub in Pennsylvania and a hub in Texas where we would pick up other folks that were involved. And so as like a 18, 19-year-old kid getting the chance to go to those places, even if it meant you're going through schooling or evangelizing or whatever the case is, still a pretty good deal. And so met some folks. I'm actually still friends with a lot of the people that I made fast friends with on those trips. And then got married young, ended up working full time instead of being able to finish college, because I started having kids and was married. And we would go to certain churches. It wasn't really anything at the beginning. It was tied to people that we knew. And then we'd kind of bounce around if others that we knew went to a different church and said, you should check this out. And then probably about 6 or 7 years ago, at a church that I was going to, their main basis was like they're the hip church, but we're going to be there for everybody that comes in, more like family, and then you would consider us like friends. If something was going on, we're going to be there for you, all that kind of stuff. And I got involved with that. I helped them do some project work. I'd help them with praise and worship stuff. Got in with a bunch of those folks. And then I had a situation with my house, and this is going to sound really petty, but looking back on it, I'm not upset about any of it. So I know a lot of people think, well, you were a Christian for 30, 35 years, if you include like when you're a baby and toddler, I guess, but 30, 35 years, like you must be mad. That's why you ended up leaving when they hear this situation. And then that ends up not being the case at all for me, but had a flood in my basement, and it was a lot of damage, and all these folks from this church essentially weren't around to kind of help me piece together the rest of my basement. I worked full time. And then from that point, I would work on the weekends. So I'd have to skip going to church. So I had enough time so I was rebuilding an entire basement because it was half finished. And I had one gentleman for about an hour that came over like a 3 or 4 month period that actually helped me do some work. And that was it. I ended up doing the rest of it pretty much on my own. And so ended up like hiring a contractor and all that stuff to help me with stuff that I wasn't good with. But that was essentially the end marker of me going regularly to church. So about a 30 to 35 year background of things with the church, going to different churches, connecting with people, having people that I thought were really good friends, just to kind of feel left hanging a little bit. And so kind of made me look at things a little different. And then from that point, made me a little more skeptical about stuff because it wasn't matching up. So,
yeah, well, I mean, when you kind of immerse yourself in this culture, and they preach so much community and helping each other and all this, and then nobody's there when you need them. I mean, that sucks. It's, we kind of, I've kind of went through a little bit of the same thing. Pastor Mike is clowning.
When you ask somebody a question about their background,
yeah,
you're talking about 30 years, fitting it in like a 7 or 8 minute segment, it's actually pretty good. So
yeah,
thanks, Pasta.
and you have Mark, Jimmy Neutron. He's just mad because he doesn't have hair like that. He's a young too. So, but so you've been friends with Oz since a kid?
So around the time that I came out of college and
Oh, okay.
started a family, we actually met through our ex-wives. So
Oh, that's
very
fun.
interesting scenario there. Yeah, but about 20, 21 years now.
Mm. See, I didn't do the whole church camp thing growing up. We were, so when I hear these stories about what happens in the camps, um, see, not to, throw anybody under the bus, but, my parents were the kind that Sunday was a day to recover while the kids are at Sunday school. So we had a bus driver, one of the sweetest, nicest old men that I've ever met. Um, and I ran into him like every 4 or 5 years. I'd run into him somewhere, and he would remember, everything about picking us up. He was one of those genuine men that really lived it, loved it, perfect example. Didn't, beat people over the head with it. He just loved people. He was a great, great example. But so about the time they started doing the camps, or we were old enough or something like that, we were in the streets thinking we were gangsters, so it wasn't,
Yeah, you're pretty gangster when you go to a church camp. I think about like hardcore rap, and I think they probably went to church camps when they were kids. And so,
yeah, hey, there's a lot of them that have. So I didn't get back into it until, young adult, and I kind of went not similar to what you're talking about. Although I have experienced that also with, when you need help, nobody's there. It's like there were two issues with me. One, my background is HVAC, and I, offered to help because the church had a small budget with some of their HVAC work. And of course I, did it for free. I'm not trying to brag on myself or nothing, but then it became to be expected. And every time, in the summertime when the HVAC guys are the busiest, I'm getting calls from them. Hey, and it wasn't a small church. I mean, it was a couple hundred people, but the church was, decent size. This unit's out and this unit's out. And they're like, 20 years old, 25 years old and stuff. And they're constantly patching them and piecing them. And I was like, man, I don't have the time. Summertimes when I'm busy, 12, 14-hour days. So that started kind of get on my nerves because it became expected. And then we had a riff in the church about a guy who was seriously, I'm not going to, give details on him. There's a lot of people here know what church I went to. So, but he was seriously not qualified to be a music director. And they had already had one they were going to hire who was very qualified. But the one that wasn't qualified was extremely talented. And, they pretty much, the deacons were yes men, and the pastor was like, I've got a vision, and, this church is going to be big and blah, 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 and all that. And it ended up backfiring. A couple guys left. One of my good friends who was a youth minister there left. And I just kind of slowly lost interest, man. The whole, you're not going to live it kind of thing, and at the same time, when I was kind of, questioning the science stuff, false dichotomy, stuff like that. So we didn't do the whole camp thing. And so when I hear these stories about the camps and what goes on, I'm just like, what?
And they would do stuff like, you would go through the week and you would be essentially in a group of campers that they utilized Old Testament book names. So like Hosea or Hezekiah or Jeremiah, you would have a certain book attached to this group of kids. And at the end of the week, there was like a humongous like obstacle course thing that you did. And then you could win one of the top 3 spots, kind of like an Olympics or whatever. So that was kind of fun. But then obviously everything was tied back to going to service at a certain time. And you would have certain things that you would do throughout the day that would match up with them teaching you about different biblical things or whatever the case is. So, yeah. Looking back on it, it was fun. But as a kid, I mean, certain time they would set up certain things to to make it fun for the kids. So
yeah, that's yeah, it's like indoctrination by fun, it's because
essentially, but
let's be honest, there's a lot of these evangelical Protestant conservative churches, the way that they approach the Bible and the faith with their, wooden literalism and things of that nature. You're not allowed to question the Bible. You're not allowed to, all these different things and things they don't say. It's like code talk, like I didn't know it wasn't mandatory to not tithe. When I found out it wasn't mandatory, nor was it taught in the New Testament, I was like, what? Why? What?
It was definitely taboo to like even research certain things to see what that belief is about. Just one of those things that they try to keep you away from.
Yeah.
Especially while I was younger. So.
Well, it's funny because I was doing the whole, on fire evangelism, and I had this guilt with me that, if I didn't talk about God everywhere I went, then I was wasting an opportunity to lead someone to Christ, and this is how they just made us feel. And I hated it. We would go knock on the doors at dinner time in the neighborhood. We'd like to see you in church. Can we come in and talk to you? And I loathed it. I did not want, but they didn't directly guilt me into it, but the way that they taught it, it was like, if you're ashamed of God, if you deny me before man, they hammer that, then I'll deny you before my Father. And, and I was trying to get my older brother in. He's like, man, that's all they talk about is money, and I'm like, no, you just happen to come in on those days. So finally, after pushing, pulling and all this, he comes in. It's a day they talk about tithing. And I was just like, you know what? They do talk about money a lot. So that's kind of what got me researching it, and he was, when I asked the pastor about it, he's like, well, we just kind of agree as a church to do it. And I'm like, I don't ever remember agreeing to that, and then when I started, because I asked him about the New Testament, not teaching it, this, that, and the other. And of course, render to God what's God, Caesar to Caesar, they interpret it as tithing still okay. And then when I started researching it, and I realized that the tithing was actually, there was a reason for it. It's because there were storehouses and the tithing was food. And those that were starving could come get food, wheat and stuff out of the storehouses. And I'm like, that's not a storehouse. It's run like a business, so that was, that's kind of what got me going. So
that definitely shifted though, that whole mindset.
Yeah.
Back really in the Roman times when that stuff really got applied because of those verses. So
yeah, absolutely. So was there a deciding factor for you, or was it just like a road that you went down and just kind of happened to, hey, I'm just not a believer anymore? Or?
So I had that period of time that I stepped away from going on Sundays. I kind of cross-sectioned what happened with, they say they're going to act a certain way according to the book, and they don't act that way. What other things could there be that's contradictory in the book that people that say they're doing everything they can to follow Christ, they're not doing those things? And then on top of that, there was always those moments where I would be praying, or I would feel like I wasn't doing enough, or is there something just wrong with me because I wasn't getting, wasn't hearing certain things or wasn't getting directed there. And I put a good amount of time into reading the Bible throughout all these different stages. And when those things didn't start adding up, then it just kind of added another layer to the onion when that other stuff happened. So I always felt that there was folks that were in the church that were a little over dramatic with certain things and got people fired up for a certain reason, then nothing would happen on the backside of it, or whatever the case is. They would tell you how they would do something, and this is how they would feel the presence of God, or they would feel the Holy Spirit, or speaking in tongues, whatever it was. And if it didn't match up with the way that they said, I felt like I was doing something wrong, or I just wasn't good enough for God, or whatever that case was. And so maybe I wasn't chosen to be in their positions, or whatever the case. So kind of going back through that process of times where I had that stuff happen, added into if people are saying they're going to be a certain way and then they're not a certain way, being hypocritical in that manner. The other side of it was I stopped going and nobody really was reaching out to see how I was doing, which was really odd to me. If I was in that case and I didn't see somebody that I was supposedly pretty good friends with, didn't see them on Sundays, I'd be texting or calling or Facebooking them or finding out what's going on. At the time, my wife was still going, and I don't know if they asked her. I didn't hear anything about her getting asked if Nate's doing all right or any of those things. Then I took I would say a year to maybe 2, where I just, because that process happened, it was like about a year and a half where that kind of melting away from going to church on Sunday every week and going to do the extra things out of the goodness, out of the goodness of my heart. I wasn't asking for anything in return, just working to be helpful for the church and for the people that I thought were either friends of mine or good people, and I wanted to help them out. Worked to just focus on me being a good person for a couple of years and doing the things that I knew I needed to do for my family or my kids or others that I knew that were friends of mine that consistently talked to me through those periods of time. Then I had occasional conversations with Austin, and me and him actually had deconversion processes around the same time. So things that we would talk about would line up that he was going through. I'd feel very similar, and we would talk through some of that stuff. And then I would say maybe about 9 months ago, 10 months ago, things got a lot deeper. Things kind of settled down for me in my day-to-day life. I reached out to him because I knew he was working on doing different stuff. We even were working on doing stuff to help the homeless without being involved with the church. So we've always had similar hearts for different things, and our lives have been really parallel. So if I called him and talked to him about something, it was a good fit, and it was very a good ebb and flow in the conversation because we both knew where we were at with life, essentially.
Yeah.
Having those conversations really, I don't know if it's like the light went off moment or whatever the case was. Like I said, it was about maybe 10, 11 months ago. It was over the summer last year. Had those conversations with them. Either the light bulb went off or the God goggles came off. And I look back through verses and I was reading them completely different than when I'd be going to church every Sunday, told what the explanations were for things, reading it for myself, having those moments where you try to deduct what that verse is actually meaning, cross-section it off of things, started listening to more podcasts, more YouTube shows, that type of stuff, just trying to find what truth was. And it's kind of led me more and more away from, I would say during that period, I was what would be considered agnostic, but definitely more agnostic atheist at this point compared to agnostic theist, I guess you would.
What denomination were you?
I grew up Assemblies of God. Then I went non-denominational with a lot of things. It's a very easy thing to do in the Midwest. Is just to say, we're non-denominational. We take everybody in. We don't care what your background is. We'll work on your, like, what you read in scripture to make sure it's aligned with what you should do to be a Christ follower, that kind of stuff. Not a
Yeah,
whole lot of talk about the stuff in the Old Testament that most Christians don't want to talk about, but
yeah, it's so was it a charismatic Assembly of God? Speaking in tongues, the anointing.
yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So they do the oil and the speaking in tongues. You'd have, looking back on it now, you'd have the set schedule for how songs would go. You'd have the high tempo 2, 3, 4 songs leading into a slower 2 to 3 songs leading into tithing period,
Did
leading
they do the
into
Jericho March?
what's that?
Did they do the Jericho March around the church?
No, I didn't have that
Drums
happen.
going?
Thankfully, I think that'd be a little odd. We'd have like the occasional 1 or 2 people dancing or going berserk in service. As a kid, you're just like, man, they're just really excited about being here at church. You didn't really understand what the mindset was with it. You'd have kids go to Sunday school and they do like the coloring pages of Noah's Ark or Jonah and the Whale or any of the fun kids stories, fantastical style stories that Daniel and the Lion's Den, all those types of things. My favorite one that I remember from being a kid was they had a Cain and Abel time that I was in Sunday school, and I was coloring a picture, and it said raising Cain, but Cain was like lifting a rock over his head, and he was like angry. So it was like a play on words, like his parents were in the background. So it's like we're raising Cain as a boy, but now he's raising Cain. And it never dawned on me until like a few years ago. I'm like, that was a really weird coloring page for a kid to be going through where he's about to kill his brother. And so, but yeah.
That reminds me of some of the songs that we sang in Sunday school, you know, in the Lord's Army.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like it's like you're teaching kids to be militant. Mm-hmm. You know, and when I got older and I realized, I was like, some of those songs are just weird, you know. And then there were some of the old hymns, you know, it was like half the song was talking about blood, being washed in blood and blood. And I'm just like, I understand the, you know, the parallel, the symbolism there, but when you're like constantly talking about being washed in blood and, you know, I'm just, at that time, I was a real literal person. I took everything really, really literal. You know, I didn't know any better. So, you know, and I even struggled at one time with when Jesus was talking, you know, obviously hyperbolic, you know, if your eye offends thee, pluck it out, you know, so that and I struggle with stuff like it because that's how they taught me to think about it. You know, they never taught me how to properly approach scripture. So, and one thing that you said, which is so paramount, is I had the exact same feeling. No matter what I did, I wasn't good enough, because they don't realize a lot of, you know, they'll be quick to try to hammer on prosperity gospels and things, or doctrines and things like that, but they're actually doing the same thing, you know, constantly preaching about you know, how sinful the flesh is, and how you got to spread the word and save souls and all it, you know, pay your tithes and give your time to charity in the church. And I lived almost in a nightmare because it was like I could never, ever be good enough. Now, of course, I had my moments of joy and, you know, fun times and stuff like that. But that was one of the things that like really, really just hammered on me, was just the not being good enough.
Yeah, and the way you're describing things, it's like they break you down then to work to build you up with either God or Jesus as being the only reason that you got built up. And it took away from valuing yourself to be able to do certain things. So if you look at things like addiction or whatever the case is, you take the power away from the person overcoming that thing by saying, well, Jesus helped you do that, or the Holy Spirit was why you did that. And there's a constant devaluing of the person throughout a lot of those scriptures and the way that they're brought, especially when you're a kid. I mean, you hear,
Right.
you're not good enough unless Jesus is involved to help you be good. And it's definitely a dynamic that can be dangerous for some people because they need to know that they are good enough or they're valuable on their own. And if that's the way you believe, you should understand that you're valuable with or without having God involved as well. So
yeah, you're allowed to take some credit for, what you've done. And that you're right. That was one of the things that I had noticed with it. If you tried to take credit for anything, it's like, you're stealing glory from God or something like that. There's always a caveat.
Yeah.
There's always something over your head or, and at the time I smoked cigarettes. I smoked for, 20 something years. And, they had actually voted me to be a deacon, but I refused.
I thought you were going to say like a calendar boy from Marlboro.
Yeah. Well, I thought I did a good job of hiding it until I quit smoking, and I realized you can't hide smoking. There could be a car, in front of me on the interstate, and I could smell smoke coming out of the car, and I'm like, to this day.
Do I have one in the center console still? Like,
yes, I didn't want to quit. I wanted to because I thought I needed to. And health wise, I've always been into fitness. Loved combat sports and things like that. So I've always, been real hard on myself about things that I do. And so when you go to the kind of churches that they are, and you're already hard on yourself. And then, like you were saying, it's God's glory. It's, you didn't do anything and, all this. And that's how I lived was, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. It wasn't me, and that steals some of the confidence, because, and it also kept me wondering, as hard as I tried to quit smoking, as many times I tried to quit smoking, why God wouldn't take it from me. He delivered this person from this person from this person from this. And I'm just like, what, begging God, please. I just want to quit smoking and I can't, quit smoking.
You can do all the things that you feel are exactly in line with what you should be doing. And then when those things don't happen, then it leaves you empty thinking kind of the way I did back in the day. Well, am I not good enough? Am I not doing the right things? Am I not getting the right advice from folks that know scripture better than me?
Having enough faith.
Where am I at with this? Or is God too busy doing something else? Or what's the case? Like, what's really going on with my scenario where I'm putting my 100% into this? Sometimes it felt like 110 or 150%. If it was something you really thought was what you were supposed to be doing. And then if it didn't come through that way, then you started questioning everything that was going on with it. So,
yeah, that's exactly how, and like you were talking about, they constantly said, well, God cares about the little things. Being from Memphis and doing a commercial HVAC, I spent a lot of time in downtown Memphis. And every time I went to downtown Memphis, I passed St. Jude, where the kids are there. And it was hard for me to believe that God cared about me smoking, while all these sick kids are over here. And finally I just, I said, you know what? One of these days I will. I'm going to keep trying, and eventually I will, because I went through a deconstruction myself, coming out of the hyper literalism, the legalism. And, I turned anti-conservative evangelical Protestants. I was, anytime I heard a young earth creationist or a literalist or something, I was mean, and then after being, a while after, because I was thinking, how could you believe that? But I believe the same thing. And then I realized that, it's like, it's indoctrination is what it is. and as effective as it is, it's hard for me to believe that it's not designed that way.
Right.
Most of the pastors I knew were pastors' sons, or, just ran in the family or something. But when they go to seminary, like if you go to a Southern Baptist seminary or something like that, I'm not sure. I haven't been to seminary. I'm not sure how they teach it, but almost every one of them comes out and does the same thing. They got a 3-point sermon plan. They got the tithing, the giving, all this whole format.
Well, they have that, or they go the complete opposite way.
Yeah.
And so I've heard of it both ways. Someone goes to a Bible college or goes to learn theology, and they either get deeper in that, or they go 180 degrees in the other direction. And with the stuff you were talking about with like the kids, where there's people that are hungry or there's kids that have cancer, the thing that you would hear is, well, God's got a plan and we just won't know until we get to heaven. And that there's something that for me didn't line up with, like, we should have more answers to some of these questions before we have to pass away to know what the plan is with certain things that don't line up. Why, quote unquote, evil men, according to the Bible, were super prosperous and looked like everything in their life was good, compared to people that had poured everything into being a Christian that maybe ended up homeless, or they are always struggling with something, or those things just didn't correlate in my head. So we'll know when we pass away. We'll see God's plan then. We'll know it 100%. That's kind of sweeping some stuff under the rug for me. So
it's taking responsibility off of yourself too. That idiom right there was extremely abused in my house. I can't tell you how many times I've heard in my life, well, it happened for a reason. God's got a plan. It happened for a reason. And, so eventually after going through the deconstruction and everything, and I, of course, people close to me and that were saying that. And so I didn't, just hammer them with it, but I'm thinking in my head, there's a reason. There's a reason that, you're behind on your car note. It's because you didn't pay it. There's a reason that they're going to cut your cable off because you didn't pay the bills. You didn't do the money right, and I heard so many times something was just falling apart. Well, God's got a plan. God's got a plan. And I was sick to the stomach of hearing God's got a plan, because we've been through a lot in our fair share, and, if I still thought that way, that I did then, I'd be like, what the hell's the plan? To torture me? I mean, is that the plan?
Right.
So because it seems like at those times, it's anecdotal, but to me, it felt like God was the furthest away, and there were times we went through some serious stuff, and there were times I did not want God to exist.
And then you'd have those moments, and then you'd have people take you to scripture where it's, well, even Jesus was tempted. So even the best of us had stuff happen that like went against him and wasn't exactly the way he thought. And even Jesus didn't want to go to the cross. He even asked God about it, but then it was part of the plan. So he went along with things that didn't make sense to him. And so you'd have those, like you said, idioms that would come from the other side. I was like, well, just steer you right back into a belief that this stuff is always good.
Yeah.
There's nothing that's incorrect with it. We just don't, our minds just can't comprehend what the actual reason for certain things would be.
Yeah. Now there is, people, talk about the problem of evil. And I think it's one of the foremost best arguments, against at least an all good God. It doesn't succeed logically, but there is what's called the evidential problem of evil. And it is something that I have seriously struggled with. For intellectually, I know the answers, but when you go through those times and those things, it's just like, I don't understand this. I don't, how, where could God be, right now? Why is he not interfering? Why is he not doing this? Why is he not doing that? I mean,
Why did Mr. Smith get a promotion to make
yeah,
twice as much as he already made, and he's rich? He's a good guy, but then you have kids in hospitals struggling to breathe or struggling to make it to the next birthday or whatever the case is. There's definitely some disconnects in the way that things are brought across when it comes to that stuff. So,
well,
maybe if we prayed harder, right? That's what you always heard too. Sometimes you just got to pray harder, or even if it's not in God's will, you can be the annoying person that prays to a point where God just gives in. Because you hear that one too. The annoying neighbor that kept coming over and knocking on the door until the neighbor was tired of getting his door knocked on at 2 a.m. and finally gave him the bread that he was asking for. And so sometimes it's not in God's will, but you can pray enough to get something to happen.
Yeah, and that's what happens when you abuse scripture. That's what happens when you take ancient documents and try to take it word for word at face value. People ask all the time, well, why did Jesus speak in parables all the time? Well, because it was a form of poetry that was easy to remember. That was, in an oral society. So when you approach it and you realize that it's literature, there's a lot of poetry, there's a lot of symbolism and metaphors and allegory. And there's just about every kind of poetry there. So we have to, when we're looking at it, we have to take into account these are ancient societies. They did crazy things back then. In the Bible, they were talking to specific people about specific things, and everybody wants to carry everything to the 21st century. Oh, well, this applies to us, and this applies to us. With the, God's got a plan thing. My wife and I, we lost a child. And if somebody would have came to me and told me God's got a plan after we lost our child, I'd have probably knocked their teeth out. If I'd have had somebody say, you just need to pray about it, I'd have probably knocked their teeth out, because
Oz has had a couple of friends recently that they went through that scenario, and that's what they were told. And it drove them up a wall that was the answer that they got. I'm definitely sorry to hear that you guys had to go through that. That's terrible. But when someone doesn't have a good enough answer, and their answer to you at that point is, well, God's got it under control. Oh, does he? Because it doesn't feel under control at that point. So what's really going on? And it makes things self-introspective with that, because you think, well, am I not valuable enough that he would do something like that in my personal circumstance, where this person I know is purposefully being blasphemous and doing things, and they don't have those bad things happen? It's again a really hard dynamic to chew on when you want to believe that stuff is true. And so
that was one of the darkest points, in our life. That was the most distant that was when I did not want God to exist, because I didn't want to face the fact that there's this great God out there, who would, and for all intents and purposes, obviously I'm not perfect. Everybody makes mistakes, but I was doing everything for a long time that I was supposed to do. I wasn't, out in the streets like I was when I was younger. I've always been an honest guy, with integrity. I value integrity. I value honesty. Even the smallest things, I do the things I say I'm going to do. Pretty honest about everything. And here we are having to deal with that, and it was watching my wife, it was so hard on her. Being a man, and we have the ability to kind of compartmentalize, you know, and then, yeah, we've been taught by society that we're supposed to be the tough people. We're supposed to be the ones who strap their boots up and lead.
And the protector and the provider and the one that doesn't allow bad things to happen. And when you can't prevent that stuff, it's a knock on you as a person again. So it's like you have that knock up front where it's like, well, God didn't do something that I felt he should have done in that situation. Then society tells me I'm supposed to have done certain things and I failed there. So yeah, you can get into a bad downward circle of feeling like you're failing in many different areas when you put 100% of your trust in that deity is an all-loving, all-knowing, all-powerful being. That's a really tough thing to swallow when those things don't go away that 1 + 1 would equal 2 in. And so those things obviously maybe to a lesser degree with me came around when, my dad passed away when I was 16. So I've had my share of like punches to the gut or whatever you want to call them, where it's like you said, you pull up your bootstraps and be a man about it. Or I had a choice to be jaded and just be pissed at everybody, or to work to still be myself and have my same personality. And luckily I had some friends at the moment that didn't allow me to just sit and wallow in that stuff and try to figure it out all on my own. It probably pushed me a little further into the indoctrination, to be honest, because they were friends of mine from the youth group that I was in. So it made you feel like, well, obviously God put these people around you to help you out with this time. So he knew what you would need for when this thing happened. And it's like, looking back on it, it's like, okay, I was really trying to do a lot of the right things, and then this still happens. And the other side of that coin is my mom, being as devout as she is, being as 100% in as anybody could be when it comes to Christianity, had that stuff happen. She had a grandson pass away. She had other stuff happen where it makes zero sense why she would have to go through that stuff if that deity was exactly what he's explained to be when you go through church services or speak with other people. And so, she's the sweetest lady I've ever met, but it's like at a certain point, did she question that stuff? Did she go through those processes of saying, where are you at with this stuff? And how did she remain in that belief? Like what things actually pushed her through that other than a feeling or something that for her is anecdotal that I didn't feel in those moments. So I just felt them because people told me about them. And so.
Well, that was what kind of sent me on my quest was, because I kind of accepted everything because that's just what I was told. But being very analytical and inquisitive and skeptic, by nature, I spent, a lot of time studying other religions and different philosophies and things. Like I said, I was agnostic for a little bit of time, not a whole long time. Like Oz and I had a conversation one night. He was just like, I don't understand why you still believe, and I told him, I said, well, I can't explain to you, when you want God to not exist and you can't shake the belief because you're so convinced, which, I don't know if if I've talked to you about it, but I'm an evidentialist. I'm a probabilist. It's to me is our belief should be proportional to the evidence, and I'm convinced. I would be a deist. I would be a pantheist or something if I wasn't a Christian, because I really feel like the arguments for God in general are very convincing. And with, Christianity, I just think that, when we take the presupposition of naturalism and things away, the explanatory scope of the resurrection hypothesis, I'm just convinced by that. So I wanted at those times I was going through that, because coming from the more of a fundamentalist background, I was, what's the plan? Where's God? Why is he not here? Am I not praying enough? Do I not have enough faith? All these different things. And once I was able to shake that, and I was angry at God, and I didn't cuss him or anything, but I was, had a few angry choice words.
Maybe you should have, though. Maybe you should have given him the finger and see what happened.
I had how much, you think at that time, how much worse is it going to get, but, so I did have a few choice words, and in the end, I will say, it has, obviously it's, it's something you don't ever get over. But it has definitely had an impact on me that, I don't sweat the petty stuff. I don't, I have this perspective now.
Well, kids will do that to you too.
Yeah, absolutely.
You get over some of the small stuff real quick because it happens so often. So,
you have to.
I mean, especially if you get into having 2, 3, 4 or more.
Yes.
A lot of that smaller stuff doesn't get under your skin anymore because it just happens all the time. And so, and you go mad trying to figure out why kids do things at certain times and why they keep doing things when they know it's not going to be beneficial for them, or writing on a wall, or spilling a drink when you tell them not to take a drink into the living room, or not doing their homework, whatever it is. There's multiple things. So being a dad probably helped with some of that small stuff too. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Most definitely. But, but at the same time, we've been through so many things, and it's like each one that we've been through. I mean, we've been through several tragedies, and, so the things that used to bother me don't bother me. It has to be monumental things now. It has to be, I have a perspective about life that is totally different, because growing up where I did, that toxic masculinity, I had 5'7". Everybody wanted to try you, my brother is 5'10".
5'7", really? 5'7"?
Yeah, I'm 5'7". Yeah. I know. My brother.
That's debatable. That might be the topic that you are.
Oh, you're saying I'm short? Oh, get out.
Up against when you are on March 20th. Maybe you get.
I'll get a tape measure for you.
So you're going to use tools to win that debate. Huh?
Well, it was funny because my brother's the kind of person who has this just crazy look to him. It's not whether you're worried about, who would win the fight. It's you don't know what he's going to do. My older brother. So he got out of a lot of stuff because of that crazy look, and he would act crazy. He is arguably a little crazy, but being 5'10", decently sized and this crazy look, there wasn't a whole lot of people that he had to fight with. You're 5'7", you look at somebody crazy, you better be able to throw them, because the people that didn't like him and didn't want to fight him, I would try to take up anytime, because we were real close. My older brother and I are not even a full year apart. And so we, you
were the tag team growing up, huh?
Yeah.
You and him were wherever he went, you went, and vice versa.
No, we fought like, it was almost a daily thing. I mean, we just scrapped all the time. But if somebody messed with one of us, the other one was there. We would be there to take up for each other. So anytime that they were pissed off at him and they didn't want to try him, they talk trash to me. Or if they talked about him in front of me, I'd take up for him. So I got in a lot of fights, growing up, a lot because of him. I hope he's watching.
Yeah, too. A lot that
I want him
had nothing to do with, really, right?
Yeah, it's like I swear I would be a millionaire if I had $1 for every time somebody says what's your short butt going to do? You know, and I'm just like, what does height got to do with it, bro? I got center of gravity. You know,
Oh,
yeah, it's a double.
did you ever ask God why you had that brother?
Yeah.
Did he ever give you an answer?
No, I sure did.
You left that one alone. He didn't
Yeah,
give
it's
you anything?
well, you know, on top of that, and plus it's kind of with my legal first name, it's kind of like the boy named Sue. You know, it was my legal first name is Leslie, and I'm named after, you know, my biological father. And so thankfully that was hidden for a long time. So I didn't have to fight for that. But I've always gone by Eddie. My middle name's Edward. So it's but you know, having him and then my younger brother, who's 3 years younger, having to take up for him all the time. You know, I've been in a few of them, and Lord knows I didn't win them all either. So
yeah. Well, win some and lose some, right? I mean,
yeah, that's how it goes, man. You live and learn. There's no such thing as losing. You learned how
not do that again.
Right. You learn
I'm not going to pull that move anymore.
That's right.
And if I've ever been in fights, I never cared about if the person was bigger than me.
Yeah,
I always felt like I was going to be quicker than them, and so, and there's ways to take a larger person down if you need to.
Oh yeah,
you can fight dirty when you're.
I was going to say
somebody twice as big as you, and so
my goal was not necessarily to win. It was to make sure they didn't ever want to fight me again.
Yeah,
I'm dirty. I have bit.
Well, you're Sweaty Eddie, man. You got to be dirty, right?
I have bit people in a fight. I have.
Mike Tyson.
Man, I have eyeball jabbed. I have done everything. You know, money shot. It don't matter. It's anything goes. And I'll tell you why. Because when I was 16, or 16 or 17, I went to Miami, Florida, with who's my wife now. I went with her family. We've been together since high school. And there was this 30-year-old man there who's pretty stout and drunk and come banging on the door trying to fight with her uncle, who was not a fighter, you know. And then me growing up where I did, you know, I'm like looking out there like, what's he going to do? What's he going to do?
Peeking through the blinds and stuff.
Yeah. Long story short, we got to scrapping in the front yard, and that guy tried to kill me. I mean, literally, he had my face buried in his chest, and his arms locked around me like this with like a gorilla grip. And I couldn't breathe. And it's the first time in a fight I thought, you know, it was life or death. So ever since then, I don't care, man. I am not, because I'm claustrophobic too. So you get my face buried. It's
some call it fighting dirty. I just call it fighting smarter.
That's exactly right.
I mean, I was never into the wrestling in high school, but I had friends that wrestled, and they would tell me there's always a way to get out of certain positions. And so no matter how locked up you think you are, needless to say, they would utilize their hands in certain ways to get out of certain locks and get the positioning back. And so,
yeah, it's my, I did a little bit boxing training. I never fought or didn't spar a whole lot or anything, but there was a old man there who had turned his garage into a gym, and he had trained. Yeah, it was a nice one though. He had trained his son, who's kind of a local celebrity there, who won the junior nationals, Golden Gloves. You know, he was like, you know, 6'4", you know. And the first thing he told me, because I played football at the same time, first thing he told me was, he's like, in order for you to fight, you're gonna have to lose a lot of weight. Well, being 5'6" at the time, 150 pounds, you know, I'm like, no, because then I can't play football. Right. You know, that's all I got, you know. So he, you know, and then I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to box. I didn't want, you know, compete and do that and this, that, and the other. I just wanted to learn. So that had a huge help. And later on, you know, having been for myself quite a bit. And then I had a friend of mine who His name is Clint, and he's like 6'4", I think. And he got into doing MMA, and he really loved jujitsu. And he was in my mid 20s. He's like, man, you got to come. It's fun. You got to come. You love it, you know. So finally, I went up there, and the first night I was there, this 17-year-old kid tapped me out in like 10 seconds. And I was like, what the, you know, because I've always been a stand-up fighter. I don't do the ground thing unless they're real tall and I got to take them down, kind of bring them to my level, you know. So I started doing that for a while, and I loved it. But I had a career, man, and they kept hurting me. I was just like,
I'm all good on that.
Yeah, the young guys just all they knew was 100%. And I'm like, bro, you got to chill, man. You can't keep bullying me over, you know. So I've learned a little bit along the way, and it's kind of helped a little bit. But now I'm the kind of guy, man, I never thought I would be, but I'm the kind of guy that would rather try to be peaceful. You know, I was a hothead growing up, and now I try to avoid it. It's real weird because
you learn that it doesn't really take a situation to a solid conclusion once you get to a certain point. And so unless you are a drinker or something like that, where you lose control of being able to handle certain situations, we get older and we understand that trying to work through something or just completely separating yourself from a person or a situation tends to be the best way to handle certain things. And so
it was, yeah. And that was, you know, it took me a long time trying to unlearn a lot of the things that I learned, you know. I've
never been called a bloke before, so I don't know if that's a compliment or not.
Yes. So yeah, you know, it took a long time, but when you get older, man, you just start thinking about things you didn't think about. You know, what if they have a gun, knife? You know, you don't know anything about them. You know, there's people that you get into it, and when it's two grown men fighting, nobody wins. Nobody wins.
The spectators, I think that's the only ones that win.
Everybody's going to hurt, you know.
Yeah.
So, but to tie it back in, you know, that's kind of like, you know, going through that with my wife and things, that kind of street mentality, toxic masculinity, you just got to kind of strap your boots up and go. And that was one of the most destructive things I think I've ever been taught. I did not grieve properly with my wife. I did not know how. Showing emotions was something that, you know, I couldn't do for a long time. I was embarrassed if I was depressed, and I've suffered with depression most of my life, but it just kind of comes in bouts. And it's, you know, so a lot of these things I wasn't taught was okay. You know, it's okay for a man to break down and cry. It's okay to, you know, just let it go, let it all out. And, you know, in this society, we just, or I don't even necessarily know if it's just this society, but kind of a male dominated history, you know.
I'm sure there's some areas where it's a lot worse.
Yeah.
Than it is here. But when you have that indoctrinated group of folks that you get told that you're less than nothing, essentially, without a certain thing in your life, and you grow up with that, it's very easy to have mental instability. It's very easy to have depression moments because you kind of retract back to those feelings that you had. And so if you don't work to help your brain out with some of those things, whether you believe or you don't believe, I think it's healthy for you to understand that your mental stability is important. It's the organ that tells everything what to do. So if you don't have that on the right track, you'll end up into some kind of trouble at some point. And so, but yeah, when you hear that, for me, it was 15 years where I could understand it, that, or more, maybe even 20, where it's like, you're not good enough without God or without this or without that. And If you have self-conscious issues anyway, where you're always worried about being good enough or fitting in or any of those things on top of it, kind of doubles down on that mentality for you. And so, it wouldn't be surprising if a lot of Christians were honest, where they said they've had more times that they battle with that stuff, but they don't say anything,
right?
Because of this, that, or the other.
Because they're afraid they're going to be, judged as not having faith or being faithful or not
Yeah,
doing.
or you haven't done enough to have Jesus help you with this, or
you're not reading your Bible enough. You're not
Right.
getting in God's word enough, and that is such a dangerous doctrine, in this whole man head of household stuff, we bought all into that,
well, it's part of the quote unquote American dream. The
Yeah.
husband would go to work, the wife would stay home with the kids. They
right.
try to help them, raise them together, to teach the boys to be hard workers and the daughters to dress dolls up and learn how to care for babies or whatever the case is. And there's a lot of things out there that women can do just as good, or if not better, than a man can do.
Absolutely.
And when you have that mentality across the board in a country, it's a hard thing to dig out of. And that's why we're still 50, 60, 70 years deep from those movements, trying to still get out of some of that stuff. And so, and then you'll still have the extremists that still believe that's the way it's supposed to be. And
unfortunately, there's a lot of them, though. I mean, it's, there's entire denominations that still teach that. And, luckily I had a unique perspective, because my mother, for the most part, raised 3 boys on her own, and she was a professional woman. And I would dare somebody tell her that a man's the head of the household. My grandmother was, they were feminists before feminism was cool,
Yep.
And I watched my mother take care of business. She wasn't perfect. She, we all have our problems. But she took care of us. And, so I didn't even feel comfortable with that whole role of man being head of household stuff. And, my wife is very loyal, very humble. So, she kind of just went along with everything, and then when I finally got away from that, and, I was like, no, this is us. This is a team. It's not up to me. It's up to us. We're not going to play this game. A family benefits from having partners, and I don't care if it's a traditional family. I don't care if it's a LGBT family. I don't, you have 2 roles in the house, and if they can be fulfilled properly, you have your love and nurturing, and then you have your sternness. And my mom did both of them just fine.
Well, yeah, there are people out there that can do everything. And, but like you said, having more than one person for a kid, I mean, they see that. And then if they happen to see disagreements and see you work through them together, or see problems come up and see you work through them together, it helps with other dynamics too. And so, but yeah, the man is head of the house, just as God's head of the church. The trickle down effect with that, there's
patriarchy garbage.
And I can understand where both sides, the men have well, you're not good enough, the demasculinity of being a man. And then for the woman, you're not good enough. You're not allowed to talk. You're not allowed to say these things. You have to obey your husband in a certain way. That takes power away from them that they should be able to utilize. And I can understand where there's women that have the victim mentality over that. They've learned that because of that side of things. There's women that feel like they have no power to change certain things when they absolutely do. And then there's guys that, like you said, can't show emotion, or feel like if they do, then they're less than, and they're not leading or doing the right things to help their kids see how to handle things as a man should.
Well, I don't know if you've ever heard this, and I might blow some fundamentalist minds, but there's actually a feminine side to God. And I believe it's the ancient Greeks. They had what God was referred to with divine Sophia. And divine Sophia was a feminine or effeminate word than I think it was Greek. I don't remember if it's whatever. Anyway, so wisdom was considered was considered divine Sophia. So the embodiment of Christ, and you may have saw it. There's Matthew Cortman on TikTok did a clickbaity line that said Jesus was intersexual. And
I'm sure that got a lot of hits
by a lot of fundamentalists, but he cleared it up. He's like, look, man, it was just to get, it was clickbait on purpose and all that, but it was about divine Sophia. It's the feminine, it's like the embodiment of wisdom in Christ. So when they have this patriarchal idea of the family, just because in Timothy, Paul talks about man being head of the household and being head of church and all that, that's what I was talking about was you got to know what's going on, who he's talking to and all this stuff. So when we take these face value readings of scripture and we apply issues from them, because there were women prophets, there was actually a woman apostle. That's for another episode. But so there was no issue with women teaching. The issue was the women that Paul was talking about. There was a group of women there who were part of, this religious thing. I don't remember the name of it.
Were they like chatty Cathys and were spitting gossip?
Yeah, well, they would yell out prophecies even during church and stuff like that. So, and they were uneducated about scripture. And, Paul was like, that's why a woman should be silent in church. And he wasn't talking about women. He was talking to a specific church about these women at that time. So when we take that stuff, when we take ancient cultural practices and we apply it to the 21st century, we end up with ridiculous stuff like a patriarchal system that we have here. Because a woman and a man, or feminine and masculinity fit together like a puzzle. There's different, pros and cons and pluses. And so when we understand that, and we understand that it's a team, and we put those two skills together, and we don't have this person loud, because I can't count how many times I've heard, well, I'm the man of the house. I'm the man of the house. I swear I wish they'd have said that in front of my mom. I would have laughed while she freaking, I'm telling you, man, she grew up with all boys and then raised boys, and she could scrap. And I seen her scrap. So I wish somebody would say that to her. I'm man of the house. Well, that man of the house better have a dental plan, because it was, she did too much by herself and put up with too much from men to play that card. So yeah, it's definitely something that we have got to get over and get past in, Western society.
Yep. And again, I think there's societies that are even worse with it than things are here, and that's where it gets really dangerous, where it's so much manipulation of it, so much control factor, so much do this or you're up a creek without a paddle, and that stuff, just as far as I'm concerned, that doesn't fly with me.
Yeah.
If not like I'm flying to these areas and going to start some kind of holy war or something with these guys. But if they would say to me, well, this is the way you're supposed to do it, I would highly disagree with them. And it probably wouldn't be a very fun conversation. Over there, they take that stuff even more serious than the guy you're talking about that says, well, I'm man of the house. Like,
Yeah.
it's not even just that; it's that to the 100th power. And
Oh,
so,
yeah. Well, then, you know, a lot of people like to whitewash history in this country, and I don't remember, it wasn't too long ago. It was okay to beat your wife. There were laws that regulated beating your wife. So while we've come past that part, like like you're talking about, I mean, the Middle Eastern countries, the women have to cover their face when they leave. They can't drive. They, all these different things. They have this literally Sharia police, that's making sure women are fulfilling their role. And if another man lusts after her because she showed too much of her face or eyes or something like that, she's guilty for it. And that's
have you ever seen Tyler Cassidy? I think his name is.
No.
You might want to look him up. He has a couple of funny songs. Like he's kind of all over the place, but he's essentially a musician, and he makes songs up about all kinds of stuff. And there was one that said, "Why do Muslim women look like ninjas?" or something like that. So I won't get into all of it right now, but if you want to see it, you can go look it up.
I'll tell you what,
it's pretty funny.
Their life. That's why.
Well,
because, the male domination there, it's disgusting, and the thing is, it's, a lot of people, they think, when they think of patriarchy, they think of the Abrahamic religions, and they don't realize, like in India, with the Hindus, they have an enormous negative in male to female population. And the reason being is because they have traditions there that if you have a daughter and she gets married, then the father of that daughter has to pay money to her husband on a regular basis. So they were having, for many years, to prevent that, they were having ultrasounds to have abortions if it was a female, because of the poorness and the in debt to it. And
like a reverse dowry or something.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
because I know there's cultures where they'll have the dowry that the male will present the family with a certain amount of money,
right,
as their like tradition to ask for the female's hand in marriage or whatever the case is.
And I think that there's actually there's a lot of studies done on whether that's led to the enormous rise in sexual assaults and rape in a lot of places in India. But I mean, the Buddhism, there's quite a few parts in history where they have, taken it to the ultimate extreme and, killed people. People are like, oh, it's nothing but a peaceful religion. No, people will use anything that they can to justify doing harm to other people.
Yeah.
So that's, I kind of get a little bothered when people try to, paint Christianity or ancient Judaism as this horrible, evil thing. And really, it's just like every other religion and non-religion in the world. People are going to abuse people and take advantage when they can. Now, I won't argue and say that, there aren't, if you approach the Bible improperly, there aren't things that could definitely be taken out of context and has been taken out of context to do harm.
That's our favorite comment, right? Well, you just took that out of context.
Yeah, it's
on our side. That's one of our favorites. So,
but also know, when I say context, I'm not talking about just passages. I'm talking historical context.
I understand that too, but
that's a scapegoat. A lot of Christians, they don't know the answer. We just got to put it in context. No, bro, you got to understand that you're approaching it, in a way that it doesn't matter what kind of context you put to it. It's not going to make sense unless you understand the culture, So, yeah, I hate using that phrase because there are so many who use it as a get out of jail free card. You're just taking it out of context. Yeah. Well, then you ask them about the context and they don't know. They're just, you're taking it out of context. And it's like, no, actually they're not. They're reading it at face value just like you do. The issue is you're looking at literature and trying to apply it literally, and it just doesn't work like that. So, yeah, I don't have any qualms with it. I mean, when I'm like a lot of times when I'm watching the Atheist Roundtable or stuff like like that, and they're talking about all these different things that Christians do and with the Bible and stuff. A lot of times I'm just like, that doesn't apply to me, so because there are a lot of them that do the things that that you guys talk about over there. Because pretty much everybody I know is come other than Jeff came from either a charismatic or a fundamentalist, or well, they're kind of in that same camp.
Well, Pasta's a cradle atheist.
Oh yeah, the cradle atheist.
He loves that term, by the way. Like, Pasta's a good sized dude, so to put him in like the baby atheist or cradle atheist kind of talk, I think it's a bit oxymoronic to say that.
On his identity, and when I saw that photo of you guys there and him towering in the back, I was like, whoa. Yeah. Wow.
I'm an average height gentleman. I'm about 5'11". I'm not 6 foot, but I'm average height gentleman. And I had to look up to talk with him. So,
well, let's just make something clear here, Mr. Average Height. Okay. See, only the Nordic people are tall people. The average height in the world is like 5'6". So
okay. I see where you're going with this. I see what you're trying to do. Yeah. You're trying to take a normal bar and isn't this like the sharpshooter fallacy? Like
this is
moving this one where it fits for you. Like, well, average if you bring in like Asia and all
I'm bringing in the stats that support me. That's it.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So because the thing is, I heard, and the only reason I know this, I heard somebody say, everybody's always heard about Napoleon and this short and stuff. I've been called Napoleon a bunch of times.
Napoleon complex, right?
Yeah. So, and somebody said, well, Napoleon actually wasn't short. He was average height for the time. And I was like, what? No way. So I started looking, and sure enough, I mean, it's like the Latin countries, it's like 5'6". The older Latin countries and some Asian countries is like 5'4". So when you put all these numbers together, the world's average height for the male is like 5'6". It really is the Nordic people.
Folks that are taller don't look those stats up.
Yeah, I know. Shut up. But the Cherokee Indians here were pretty tall.
Titan says we should bow to him. I would probably bow to him even if he wasn't 6'4". Like
6'4".
He's legendary in the Discord community and a couple other places. So 6'4" is irrelevant. I would still bow to your power on the Discords and other places there.
Well, how come I've never run into him on Discord? How come I haven't been invited on Discord all the time?
You gotta get up there a little higher so you can see.
I'm too
Nicodemus, right?
I'm too short to see the link.
You gotta climb that tree, brother.
It's Titan. This is only because I heard it so much from my stepdad. This is nothing against you, but you're 6'4". I didn't know they stacked crap that high.
Oh.
My stepdad.
Now you'll never see him on Discord. He'll just block you before you're even in the
retired truck driver. So imagine the comebacks and the jokes, and that's all they do all day and all night is talk trash. So he would just snap, bang, 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 and you couldn't hope. Then why are we not friends, Titan? I have my own brute fact server, and I've never seen you on there.
He doesn't stoop to that level, I guess.
Oh,
you need a sound machine, man.
You can't leave it. Yeah, it's it reminds me of a Vine that I saw. Yeah, we'll talk about Vine.
Wow, Vine. Is that still around? Wasn't
that
like 5-7 years ago, something like that.
Yeah, it spends the whole Vine going to the store, Home Depot or whatever, and all this, and then he comes back and he puts a level on the floor and stands on it and says, "You can't get on my level."
Oh my god!
And I was like, that's corny, but that was hilarious.
Is that like the ladder joke?
Yeah.
Like this is my step ladder. I never knew my real ladder. So.
Oh, here come the dad jokes. That's pretty good. I haven't heard that one. The only ladder joke I heard was when I worked for a small contractor years ago, and I told him, I said, man, boss man, it's about time for a raise, ain't it? And he said, well, I'll get you a ladder. What? And I was
wow. Get back to work.
Yeah, he was my height, so I didn't know if it was a short joke or a dad joke or you ain't getting no money joke.
Pasta's getting a little peanut butter and jealous in chats.
I ain't even paying attention to it because I've invited him like 5 times, and he keeps saying, "When are you going to have me on? When are you going to have me on?" So whenever
is this the formal invitation?
I told him he's got an open. I gave him like 6 formal invitations.
On the next episode of Brute Facts, Pasta Mike.
Yes.
Cutting it up with Eddie.
Pasta Mike, the voice of the Atheist Roundtable. Please tell me I'm on your next episode. You're on my next episode. When's it going to be?
We're all watching the chat very intently. What day is that going to be?
Hey, that's a good idea, Titan. Every time I do one of these, I'm like, I need it because I want to give Oz for the credit for the rap that he wrote for this too. So I keep forgetting to go and put, links in the videos and stuff. But I'm ADD, man. You gotta cut me some slack.
So say it on the show.
Yeah,
like you just did. Come to my Discord.
Come to my Discord, Brute Facts server.
There you go. And then give props wherever you want to give props and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Hey, everybody, I want you to know that Oz wrote that and rapped that for me, my intro. I was actually going to put it on the video. I'm going to put it on the little screen thing so people know.
Well, you got the Twin Towers trying to team up, it looks like.
Man, that's what I'm saying. You get 2
Pasta's coming on with Titan.
It's going to be like WWE, and I'm over here as Rey Mysterio.
Are you gonna wear a mask?
Yeah. What do they call them? The
luchadors.
Oh
yeah, lucha libres.
Yeah, I'll be a lucha libre. Oh, all right. I think we've about run this stream out.
All right,
Nate, I appreciate you coming on. What?
Thanks for having me.
Titan said he's done like 3 streams and never had anything to say. He's full of it in the chat. No, I appreciate you coming on, sharing your story with us. Great having you. Definitely like to have you back. Call Pasta Mike later, tell him he's a punk, because I've invited him quite a few times.
Yeah, you have to call him at like 2 a.m.
2 a.m. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
So
he's delayed out. So
thank you, bud. I'll see you next time. I've got a couple of guests in the working, so I'm not sure when the next one's going to be or who it's going to be. So, but I'm going to bounce you out and do a close, and peace out, Nate.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Everybody, thank you for watching Brute Facts. We typically do Tuesday nights, 7 p.m. Central. Here lately is a lot of crazy schedules, so I'm kind of doing the shows as I can. So I'm not sure. I will definitely post some updates to let you know when the next show's coming on, things of that nature. So I appreciate you guys hanging out with me, and I'll catch you next time.
Brute facts. Brute facts. What you know about that? Brute facts. Brute facts. What you know about that?